Hello and welcome again, all of my star pupils. So we today are going to be talking about the second part in the Halloween series, which is going to be about the topic of witches. If you haven't checked out my last video that I did, I will link it down in the description below. It's all about the history of pumpkins and jack-o'-lanterns, and there is a second part video to that I had done with building a pumpkin terrarium. So definitely check that out. Again, I will be linking that down below. Today for this video, we're going to be talking about the topic that is popular during Halloween a lot of times, and that is the topic of witches. So what I wanted to do for this video is I wanted to give a brief history of where did the term witch originate from. Again, I found a lot of research about this, you guys, so if you do want to go on the internet, you can look up books on Amazon. There is a lot of information out there about witches and witchcraft and things of that nature, how it started, where it originated from. So I'm just going to give a very condensed version of all of that. I will not be touching upon anything having to do with the Salem witch trials. The only reason is because that is another form of history into itself, and that would take too long for us to talk about in the video. So I just wanted to give a few facts about witches and witchcraft, how come they're so popular, especially around this time period with Halloween approaching. Why have witches been so much in popular culture for most of the time? And then I wanted to segue into the second part of the video where I will be talking a lot about the famous movie Hocus Pocus. I don't know if some of the viewers of my channel have ever seen that movie, have ever, explored that movie. It's a very big popular culture type movie about witches. It's a Disney movie, so I will be touching upon that. And then in the second part of the video, I will actually be doing a project that is related to the movie. So I will be posting that sometime this Sunday or sometime this weekend, because the project does take a little bit of time to complete. So we will get into the video then to start with the history of the witches. After this video also too, I did want to mention that I'm going to be doing a tarot card reading using the Everyday Witch Tarot. I kind of just felt compelled to do a tarot card reading this time because again, we are talking about witches, so it would only be appropriate to do something like that. So starting with the word witch, where does it come from? Where is it derived from? So basically the word witch derives from an Old English noun called Wicca. Now I'm sure that a lot of you maybe have heard of this term. You've heard of the term Wiccan, you've heard of Wicca, all that type of stuff. The words actually originate in, they call it a Proto-Germanic or Proto-Indo-European word, but they're unsure of the actual origins of where it started, because again, the term witch is also very widely used in different cultures. It's not just in, the Western type of culture. It's used almost all over the world, this term, and witches can mean different things. I mean, you have in Central America, they're called medicine men. Over in the East, they're called, shamans. They're called other things besides the term of witch, but pretty much the term witch all means the same thing. So there has been throughout history, which brings me to my second point, there's been no consistent definition or no constant definition for the term of witch, because it's so able to be contrasted to multiple groups, you guys. So if it's, again, the term witch is used loosely, but it can be used against multiple cultures, multiple, people. We often coin or associate witches, in the Western culture as being a female or being, among women, which I'll get into that a little bit later. But actually, the term witch can also be used for male and female. So that's something that, maybe you didn't know about before. The term witch is loosely based with male and female, and, male and female can be called that at any time. So another thing that this whole thing started with the term of witch, or where it started to become very much kind of an issue, but popular, where people were talking about it a lot, was in the 15th century. So everybody knows probably on this channel or has some idea of the Salem witch trials, when they started, why they started. I'm not going to get into that a lot. It's a very poignant part in history. And the reason is that a lot of people were persecuted during that time for being claimed that they were a witch. Again, and also the term witch was used to kind of strike fear into people. It didn't have a positive connotation, and that's because 15th century writers would write about witches in such a way that they would invoke fear in the populace. They would, depict witches as being almost very ugly or very, not having great personalities. They would play tricks on people. They would curse people, hex people. They would use all of these terms in their writings because back then a lot of people were highly religious. So for them to step outside of their comfort zone was just something that people didn't do. They didn't explore nature. They didn't explore a lot of things having to do with healing or medicines or anything of that nature. And a lot of these 15th century writers, because they too had a religious background, were very much against witchcraft or witches. So they would in turn write about it and then kind of fantasize what a witch would look like, or, use it to invoke fear in the populace for what a witch would look like. But in reality, witches back in the day were mostly midwives. They were mostly, practitioners or healers. They would use, herbs, or, because again, you have to think also, my star pupils, that medicines weren't readily available back then like they are now. There wasn't any type of doctors, spread it around like there is now, oddly enough. And they oftentimes were healers, and, you would go to a private healer or a midwife, or you would go to mostly these women who were kind of outcasted in the society. The other thing is that the term witch and witchcraft are two different terms. So obviously witch, being a noun, is something that is used to depict the person of who practices witchcraft. Now, witchcraft was actually a term that was coined during the 1600s, during the Salem witch trials. And the person who actually coined this was a Puritan judge who believed that these witches would get part in these covens, and they would craft, as he called it, things to disrupt the town, things to disrupt the religion. They felt that they were, crafting demonic things, all of these, type of things. So that's where kind of witchcraft is more of a practice that was coined in a negative term during the Salem witch trials. So basically, it's just, in other words, the practice of magical skills, spells. A lot of people believe nowadays that witchcraft is about divination tools, such as using crystal balls, have been very, very particular in movies and things like that. Or even now, there's also the tarot, use of astrology, things like that. So now it's kind of more of a wider scope, whereas before it was just strictly, using herbs, medicinal things. It was crafting some type of healing power back then. So basically, after all of the Salem witch trials and the persecution of witches and just the negative connotation that is associated with witches, and especially with women in power. And the thing is because again, we're talking about the past, but currently in modern society, the term witch has been used in a lot of popular culture, in a lot of movies, in a lot of books, books and a lot of literature. So the term witch has changed so many times throughout the years since the Salem witch trials when witches were persecuted. But currently in modern times, the term that's used as witch is used to refer to a benign, a positive, a more naturalistic approach to the practice of paganism. It's a neutral type of situation because, again, it's more of a religion than it is an actual type of practice anymore. So this also too, this term Wiccan, paganism, all this kind of stuff is more so used in the Western cultures to kind of be or solidify that popular culture with witches. Not a lot of the Eastern and, the Southern parts of the world have that type of popular culture with witches like we do in the United States. A lot of times, witches are revered in other cultures. They are to be, respected, but then also to be feared at times, depending on the witch, if they're good, if they're bad, that type of thing. Whereas here, we take it more as a popular culture approach. And again, there are a lot of practicing Wiccans in the United States. I did look that up. There is a lot of practicing, pagans. There's not that many, but there is still in the United States even till this day. Going into the segue of Salem, Massachusetts, I don't know if anyone has been there before, any of my star pupils, but Salem, Massachusetts is still a functioning town. It's still a functioning place, even till this day. And there is a lot of history surrounding Salem and surrounding, witches are a huge thing there, and it's a part of the culture. It's a part of, the history. So these things really do exist. And if you ever do have a chance to go out there and visit, I would highly suggest that you do. It is full of information. It is full of history. It's full of that history of the Puritan Society, with Nathaniel Hawthorne, all of that type of stuff. So, there are some practicing witches, today, and witchcraft, honestly, if you even look on Amazon or Google, you can easily find more information about witchcraft in these past few years and spell casting and manifestations and law of attractions than you could even find in years past. So that just goes to show how open the society is becoming to this phenomenon, and that it's not exactly all culture. It's more becoming about practice, becoming about healing. The Reiki teachers, they are considered another onset of that. And it's just interesting to see how much the term itself has changed and what it means currently today. So going into the segue of Salem, and speaking of Salem, we are going to talk a little bit about the movie Hocus Pocus. Now, Hocus Pocus was released in 1993, in July of 1993. The reason why the movie was released in July of 1993 was to not compete during the Halloween season with another Halloween favorite, The Nightmare Before Christmas by Tim Burton. I don't know, again, if some of my star pupils have seen that. So Hocus Pocus starts out in Salem, Massachusetts. And in the story, what ends up happening is that there are 3 witches who are, in other words, evil, but they're quirky, they're funny. There are different things about these witches. And what's so interesting is that these witches are from the old Salem time period, but they kind of get that new twist of modern in the 90s, of where you can see that they have colors, they have different looks about them, they're different than the Puritans in the movie. So in the beginning, there's Mary Sanderson, there's Winifred Sanderson, and then there's, Sarah Sanderson. Winifred Sanderson's the leader kind of the sisters. And they are basically killed in the beginning of the movie because they had stolen a child from the town and basically sucked the life out of her. And then you have the Puritans in that time who declare that they are witches. And again, if you watch the movie, you'll see this throughout the whole entire movie. And it for Disney back then, it was kind of a little bit progressive, because watching it as an adult, you're able to see more things versus watching it as a child. So what ends up happening throughout the story is that there are, two teenagers, and then there's also a younger child. So there's Max Dennison and Danny Dennison, and they're, brother and sister. And then there's also Allison, who is, basically Max and Danny have moved from California to Salem, Massachusetts, and it talks about this in the movie. And basically what happens is that they stumble upon the old Sanderson house. Now, what's interesting about this in the movie is that the Sanderson house is actually a replica of one of the old Salem houses. And again, if you go to Salem, Massachusetts, they may touch upon this. It's a replica of a house that actually stood on the hill where many of the witches during the witch trials, who were persecuted, some of them were declared actual witches and some of them were not. They actually were hanged on this hill near an old house that, if you see the old pictures, it looks exactly the same. So they basically reawaken the witches, and then they go through this whole thing throughout the movie of where the witches have come back and they want to steal the lives of children. They go through all of the plots and everything, and there's the cat Binks, who was turned into a cat who was originally a teenage man during the beginning of the movie. So there's all these different elements and cinematic elements that happen in the movie that make it so good, because it not only touches upon the past of things, but just the comedy and the timing and the acting in it is just so great that if you had a chance to see it and know who the actors and actresses are in it, then Bette Midler especially is a great character actor, and you can see that she does a lot of things in that movie along with the rest of them. Sarah Jessica Parker is in that movie too. So again, they just go through this whole entire thing throughout the movie. So a couple of things with trivia about this movie. If you haven't seen this movie, I would strongly suggest that you do see it, because what's so great about this movie is, like I said, it gives a lot of old world feel from the Salem times, of that type of thing. It shows you a lot about Salem, Massachusetts. The thing is most of this movie was filmed right in Salem, Massachusetts, in different parts and different sections of Salem, so you can kind of see that too. And then you also get the sense of the modern times with dealing with witches, and it's great for kids and adults to watch too, so that's kind of great too. So basically, there's a couple different things. So the animatronic cat, for the trivia, that was used in this movie, what is so crazy is that this is the first ever Disney movie that used visual effects and used a lot of the CGI that back then was just coming out into these type of movies, whereas now we use that readily, or we use like the green screens or the blue screens. That never happened back then. So Disney actually put a lot of budget into this movie, and it did particularly well, but it became more of a cult classic as time has gone on because of the value of the movie and because of the way that it depicts Salem, Massachusetts in such a great way, and just everything having to do with that. But then also the characters in the movie too are really great, and they're memorable for all this time period. And what's crazy is that most of the people my age have grown up watching this movie. They know this movie, they know parts about it. So the animatronic cat that was used to play the character Binks, he would actually later be used in the TV show Sabrina the Teenage Witch. So they actually bought the animatronic cat for that, to use it for the TV show. And then in the project that we're going to be doing, which I will, touch upon in my next video, I'll show you kind of what Binks looks like and what we're going to be doing with that. So during the 20th anniversary showing, there is the character in the movie. His name is Billy Butcherson, and he in the movie was dating, the whole story goes that he was dating Winifred, and then when he started to get a hold of her sister Sarah, Winifred basically was very pissed about that, and she killed Billy and sewed his mouth shut and buried him alive. In basically the movie, it touches upon that. When Billy is awoken to basically hurt the kids in the movie, he opens his mouth to be able to talk, and there are moths that actually come out of his mouth. Now, for years, if you were a kid watching this movie, that was very gross and very scary at times because of the way that he looks. So the actor who plays him basically stated that those moths were not CGI affected. They were actually, there was a piece of mesh in his mouth, and then it released once he cut his mouth open. And they were just nestled in his mouth. So that was also something I did not know. And doing some research for this video, that was a part of that. You know, actually the other interesting thing is that Sarah Jessica Parker, if you've ever watched the show, you know, the shows for Ancestry with the celebrities and things, one of her ancestors actually was persecuted during the Salem witch trials, which I thought was very, very interesting. She was persecuted actually for killing her husband, and actually burying him. And what they believed was that she actually killed him because he was with another woman. So I just think that that was very interesting too. Again, I touched upon the fact that Hocus Pocus was filmed mostly in Salem and other areas. And again, the house that was used was actually a replica, and that was torn down. But the same school that's in the movie is still in the Salem, Massachusetts Park and Square. You can see that movie. You can see the movie, but you can see the school even today, and there are tours that are done there. But the house that was used was torn down because Disney actually built that house, and it was used on one of the Disney sets and not in Salem, Massachusetts. But again, it was a replica. And like I said, the movie was released. It did very well in the beginning when it was released, but it became more popular as time has gone on. It's still a great movie to watch, so I would highly suggest that if you haven't seen it. I mean, it's just a Halloween classic. You definitely should see it. So for the project, let me just touch a little bit upon this. For the project, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be doing, I had a pumpkin that I really, really wanted to paint a deco pumpkin or a decorative pumpkin. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to paint a scene from the movie onto the pumpkin and show you guys how simple this is to do. If you were interested in watching that video, please stay tuned. I'm going to try and do parts of it so that I can kind of show the painting process, how you can trace stuff out. Again, like what you can use to kind of make it your own, because again, like this, with this time period too, like if you can't find pumpkins readily and you still want to do a craft, maybe if you have kids or maybe even just for yourself. So I will be posting that video relatively shortly, and it's going to have, the pumpkin's going to have the whole Hocus Pocus theme. So again, please stay tuned for that. I'm going to be doing a everyday witch tarot reading. I know I've talked about this, you guys. This is a great starter tarot to use. It is just, I love this tarot deck a lot, and I do use it a lot. It has all of the descriptions in there. I will link this down below if you did want to actually buy this, any of my star pupils. It's a great deck to start with. I know a lot of YouTubers who use this deck that I've seen before, but what's so nice about it is you can actually read a lot of these, so you can just, you know, read them. I'm also going to be using this as kind of a guide tool. This is another great one, Ask the Guides for an Oracle card deck. So I'm going to actually, I think, kind of start with that to kind of get a sense too. I mean, this is October, so a lot of things are going on right now. Like where kind of we are at in October, and this will kind of be like our October reading, to kind of do this. I mean, again, it's fitting with the witch video because we're talking so much about witches and divination and using things. And what's interesting to me is what I found out with the research of all of this is that sometimes witches don't need to be classified as that in order to be considered, you know, having any type of power or internal, you know, natural approach to healing. What I think is interesting is that in Practical Magic, another really great movie and favorite movie of mine, one of the ladies in there talks about the fact that every one has a little bit of magic somewhere in them. And I think it's important to understand that this intuition for my star pupils, it comes from within. So if you're feeling certain things or if you're touching upon certain things, you don't necessarily have to be a witch in order to feel those things. It's something that's just innately in all of us, and you can easily feel that at any time that you want to. So that was kind of interesting that that movie does touch upon that. It's great, you know, for witches also too, like a lot of candle spells are very, very practical but important. So if you ever do want to get any books on that, you can definitely look that up online. So I'm going to start for the reading with a couple of the oracle cards, and I will link the decks down below. So we're actually going to start with two of them that are great to start with. I'm going to do three of them. So what's so great is that we're going to start this reading by talking a lot about what are the things we need to work on for October. So again, this is a general reading. A lot of you are working on self-control and that of the higher self. So because this is a general reading and because this is what we're going to start with, I think that this is very interesting that maybe you are going inward a lot and you're thinking about how can I control only myself and not others? How can I kind of get more in touch with that type of intuition that I was talking about before on the inside, and kind of letting that natural approach happen instead of constantly always kind of throwing yourself out there for something that might not fit you or for something that you feel like you're just tossing your own energies at. You know, solitude is another thing too. Like you are looking, most of the star pupils probably out there are looking for some alone time. You're looking for maybe projects to do. Again, with autumn, it's interesting because you go into kind of going inward, being alone more, that type of thing. So again, solitude kind of helps with the self-control because you're able to kind of get away from everything that's kind of just bogging you down or kind of just coming to you at one point or another. And spirit kind of is maybe telling you to just take some rest, take time back, which brings me to the next card, which is rest. So you're focusing a lot of my star pupils are focusing a lot on themselves right now. They're focusing on kind of turning inward. I mean, I know that the weather's kind of getting colder. You're maybe thinking more so about your job. We're coming to the end of the year. Hopefully this year ends because a lot of things have been going on, I'm sure, as all my star pupils have seen. And you're trying to get away from a lot of that. And a lot of times coming to these videos and doing these fun things or trying to take your mind off of it, doing the meditations or doing manifestations really, really helps with all of that. Especially, whoa, they were just all jumping out at me now. Doesn't happen. So these cards must be hot today, you guys. But what I was saying was about the self-control. You know, it's very hard right now because a lot of people in the world want to take control of situations. They want to make things better. They want to make things more positive. But at this type of time period, Spirit's kind of just telling us to step back and step into ourselves. Get some rest, be alone. Don't have to apologize for things that you need. If you need help, if you need to talk to someone, anything like that. So keep that in mind. The oracle cards are great because they provide a great platform for what, again, this is a general reading, for what everyone's going through, and then you can kind of build upon that as you see fit. Also, all my star pupils, get a lot of rest, you guys. I mean, we are coming into, there's going to be another full moon on Halloween. You know, the blue moon, which is so interesting because Halloween is on a Saturday this year. So, you know, definitely take some time for manifestations. We're talking about witches in this video. It's like, do a candle ritual if you need to, or, you know, definitely do an herb tincture, or having, like, some people make their own potions. There's a lot of things. There is this thing out that I've seen on some YouTube videos, you guys, about like crystal water and all of that. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there if you do need to kind of, you know, look into that. I mean, I definitely want to do some more with this channel because it's just been interesting to kind of see what's been going on. I've been doing a lot of the craft videos because you guys need something to do, and also it's good to kind of just get that positive vibe out there, especially if you have kids that are home or things like that. So I'm gonna do, because these cards have just been wild, you guys, like they've been wild and it's been completely crazy. So I'm gonna pull some of these because it's just, I'm just so surprised at how much they've been, you know, just popping out here. Okay, so I'm definitely sensing that there is a lot of fire energy, you guys, like so much fire energy here going on in this deck. I mean, I know that, yeah, there's like a ton. So I'm going to start with the wands that we had that were pulled. Because we pulled most of the major parts for the wand. So I just think this is highly interesting. So we started off with the wand group. Now these are fire energy, very powerful, very potent. It's about action. It's about doing. It's about getting out there and trying to do things. So we have, you know, the Three of Wands, which kind of tells me that you're in the process of casting. You're in the process of letting something out, doing some type of action that's letting out there how you feel or how you want something to manifest for you. It's also showing that you are taking on the work. You are trying to cast. You are trying to put your best self out there forward, which goes a lot with the self-control. You're trying to make things more positive for yourself by putting yourself out there, getting a new job, going into a new relationship. You're hoping that things come back to you in a different light. So that's kind of what you're working on right now. This whole thing kind of is interesting because it leads you to what I would call the 3 court cards. So we have first to start with the Knight of Wands. I mean, again, this is someone who is either a Leo, Sagittarius, or Aries. If you are that type of star pupil reading this, this is probably yourself that you are kind of generating. This is a younger person who, you know, the Knight of Wands is self-explanatory. That is the type of person that just goes for the action. They don't always think they're ready to take on, you know, the dragons of the world. They're ready to take on that hard challenge going up towards the mountain. I mean, the Knight of Wands just goes based on feeling, based on, you know, freedom, based on doing, based on action. Maybe what the Oracle cards are trying to touch upon too is maybe you need some time before you make that decision, before you take that action. You really kind of need to go within and kind of feel, is this enough for me? Should I be taking this type of path? You know, having some self-control, being alone, that type of thing. But you're really ready for it. You've been manifesting and casting enough, and towards the end of the year, you want to kind of be done with this whole situation and have something go through it. What's also interesting is that in most of these cards you will see the familiar, or what, you know, witches would call a familiar, and that is the black cat, because the black cat is often depicted as being supernatural or otherworldly versus other cats. This shows that you were using a lot of both your feminine and masculine divinities to kind of balance out where you're at. You take action, but you can also, you know, tame the beast a little bit and kind of, you know, move through things using both your feminine and your masculine energies when it comes to action, when it comes to learning, when it comes to doing things. So you're kind of in that Wands energy, and because you're going to stay in that Wands energy and because you're balancing all that out, it will lead you to a new beginning. It will lead you to that type of casting that you've been doing. It will lead you towards that new beginning with action. You will move through this time period with action and with feeling, and it'll help you to cast better. It'll help you to move forward. It'll help you to become a better star pupil. You'll be looking into things. You'll be learning things. But this is all about action for you on the last few months of the year for everyone. It's more about action than it is about sitting back anymore. So we do have the Knight of Cups, which shows me that if you are a water sign also too, watching this, Pisces, Scorpio, or Cancer, you are also too looking for love. You're looking to kind of cast out that positive energy into the world and find love again. You know, get in touch with your emotions, which can help with the rest and the you know, quiet or the solitude that you need to go through in order to find that person. You might be wanting to manifest relationships, but right now that's not at the forefront. You have other things that you want to be doing. The last two cards are, you know, there's Judgment. So you feel like you are being judged for your decisions, which is probably part of the self-control. Maybe you're letting a lot of this wand and fire energy out too much, and you're kind of looking for the self-control part of it because you're being judged by others, but you're also kind of judging yourself a little bit harshly, which could help if you do go alone by yourself in the solitude, because then you won't be judging yourself as harshly. And then, of course, we have the Wheel of Fortune, which is great because out of the outcome of all of this, you will have a chance to make a different choice. You will have the chance to use that wheel to kind of conquer these type of things. And the new beginning that you've been wishing for with that Ace of Wands will actually come to fruition. But the Wheel of Fortune is also turning for you. So Spirit's kind of saying, like, yes, you are taking action, you are doing these things, but the Wheel of Fortune is turning for you. So things are going to happen that you're not going to expect. Things are going to happen that are kind of out of your control. It just depends on how are you best able to handle it that would come into the situation. I usually don't do this for readings, but I will for this one. I usually do for private readings or things like that, but I kind of just feel like wish cards are great because it's something that you might be wishing for and something that you might be thinking about. So I've pulled this card before with the Seven of Cups. So you are thinking about choices. You are wishing to have an abundance of choices, and you are wishing for things to kind of go your way because you've been manifesting so much and putting so much out there. So that's great for this, my star pupils. I'm glad that people are out there manifesting, that they're working towards a goal. I mean, again, this is a very uncertain time right now. So, you know, sometimes you got to go through rough things in order to kind of get those good things too. So, that was the reading, but I do want to say again, please stay tuned for my second video, and I will talk to you all soon. Bye.